What is good, my people, my peeps? How are you guys doing tonight? Well, I am here to somewhat give a review of my thoughts of Hulu's Freaknik. Yes, it's on Hulu, it's new, and I thought that I would come on and just review this documentary. And I wasn't, to tell you the truth, I was not going to watch the documentary for a couple of reasons. But I guess the main reason was the promo. Now, before it aired on Hulu, I had heard about it on different social media platforms. Mostly, the foremost one was TikTok, where I had heard about this documentary coming, right? And so I was like, okay, well, let me check out. Well, I don't think I want to check out this documentary. That's my thoughts because of how the promo was just being aired on TikTok. I don't think I ever seen anything aired on any other social media site. So I don't even know if you guys know that there was a documentary regarding Freaknik. And some of you guys, this is my era. This is when I was the young jitterbug, okay, in the 90s, okay, when I was able to be fancy free in the world, okay. But my life was a little different. I never went to Freaknik, so let's just get that out your head. I know you, oh, I knew she was at the Freaknik. See, she telling on us. No, no, no. I remember I was married around this time. Are engaged and then get about to be married around this time. So I never made it down to Freaknik. But that is not to say I did not want to go to Freaknik because everybody was going to Freaknik in Atlanta. Yes, indeed. We all wanted to go to Freaknik um, because in the 90s, it was a fun time to be um, young, fancy free. Okay, a totally different time that I see for the youth of today in the 2000s, right? Totally different time. But yes, indeed, a sister wanted to go to Freaknik because it was more about fun and community. And so when I saw this documentary being advertised on TikTok is where I mostly saw it being advertised that it was coming out. Um, I just heard so many people and how it was advertised. Now, this could be the advertisement could be a very ingenious way of advertising Freaknik. I was about to say picnic, Freaknik, because it was like, what did your mama do down in Freaknik? Did your mama tell you that she was at Freaknik? Uh-huh. We got your mama on camera at Freaknik. And I was like, here we go. As if men weren't at Freaknik, right? Now, I hear so so much. I'm gonna at this point call it rhetoric regarding women, right? And coming from men, because especially how women should dress, how women should look, how women should behave. And some men love to throw back to the time of the 90s. And possibly a lot of these men never lived in the 90s. I believe they're probably millennials, the most of it. I came through that era. That was my coming out to the world as being a grown person, per se. So I lived the 90s up until the 2000s, okay? I was born in the 70s, but that was not my era, right? That's when I was being molded into the person I was going to be, the 80s going through school, but the 90s, that's when I stepped on the scene with a gangster lean, if you will. So I hear men on these platforms, right? Different platforms of today, of the 2000s. Oh, the women in the 90s. Oh my gosh, they didn't wear makeup and all these eyelashes that these women wear today. Oh, these are the women of the 90s. And I'm like, these millennials need to sit down and have several seats. Because the women of the 90s, um, they made fun of them in a different way. Do you guys remember the movie Baps with Holly Berry and I think her name was Regina, but I cannot remember her co-star, where they had the updo hairstyles and it was the long, long fingernails and the gold chains and the gold teeth. Yeah, that was just a caricature of the women of the 90s when we did the freeze curls and we wore spritz in our hair to keep it hard and but we didn't do yeah, the lashes wasn't a thing, but those doggone fingernails sure was, and those high updos of hairstyles, they were a thing back then. And so when I hear men try to criticize women about their looks of today, that's their looks of today. The lashes. Um, and every decade, every century has their own style, right? And so it's just funny how men try to go back to days of old, and half of them were not even born or really did not experience that timeline. So it it's a controlling. I have to tell you, it is definitely a controlling mechanism when men try to compare these things of women today versus the women of the 90s. They don't really know how the women of the 90s, and I'm not saying all, because all women of today don't look alike, don't dress alike. All of them don't, okay? But we can stereotype, right? We love to do that for amongst ourselves. So I wasn't going to watch the Freaknik documentary simply because of how it was promoted and how, once again, men were like, it's all about what your mama did. And there, I have to say, for the last 3 or 4 years, it has been a blame game of what your mama did and how your mama raised you, and everything is your mama's fault. It is the gene of um, Adam, the blame game. You know how he blamed Eve when he got caught eating that apple, too. We know it's not an apple, but roll with me. When he got caught eating the apple, well, this woman you gave me, it's a blame game instead of taking responsibility. So this is how the promo went for the Freaknik. It's on Hulu, and it aired this month. Basically, I think it just aired on the 24th or something like that. So, um, but anyway, I hadn't planned on watching it just because it was that blame game of, ooh, look what your mama was doing in the 90s at the Freaknik, as if the Freaknik was uh, named the Freaknik to be freaky, right? I love documentaries when they're accurate. And I am so happy, I have to say, that I did, out of boredom, say, let me see. Curiosity. Well, it didn't kill the cat, it educated the cats, if you will. So I watched it tonight. And I am so happy that they probably hoodwinked a lot of these men who are so very much upset and thought that by watching this Freaknik documentary that they were going to be vindicated, that they were going to be vindicated on these negative stereotypes and negative talking points that have been circulating about what your mama did and how your mama ain't no good and how your mama was at the Freaknik, right? Everybody was at the Freaknik. And so, if you have not watched the documentary, this is at this point, I'm going to have to issue a spoiler alert because I have to go in, if you don't mind. Um, yeah, I am so happy that this documentary was put together exactly how it went down in the 90s. So these lies can stop being circulated. And so we can stop trying to blame the black woman for everything, 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 right? Um, so as I'm watching the documentary, it actually, when I first started watching it, put a smile on my face simply because it's nostalgia, right? Anytime you listen to something or hear music or something from an era where you were living you thought your best life, with your younger years, if you will, um, it might put a smile on your face. It might bring back memories. And so that's what it did. And so as they go into this documentary, they tell you exactly how the Freaknik begun. You see, us as black folks, and now that President Putin of Russia, has let you sleeping folks still know that they all black. The people of that Bible is all black, right? Um, we are very educated, wise, and wisdom without even necessarily having to attend any formal education. But nevertheless, Freaknik was formed by college students, right? If you didn't know. This is where the spoiler alert gets deep. Okay. So if you want to go watch it, I say go ahead and leave now and go watch it and then come back later and leave a comment if you agree or disagree with my breakdown or um, my assessment of this documentary. Freaknik started in college, and I remember these days. Now, I wasn't in college. When Freaknik started, I was still in high school. Um, but I recall the movie School Days, right? Some of you guys may recall that movie. Spike Lee was a young director then coming up, and he produced the movie School Days. Um, and so college life was being brought to the forefront of a lot of young, impressionable black folks, African Americans, and now we know as Israel. A lot of us were being introduced to college life, college campuses, especially life on a historical black college, right? Even Bill Cosby got into the act of really um, getting the word out there about black colleges, Bellman and all these other black colleges that we know that are in Georgia. And so when spring break occurred, a lot of kids might go home. Spring break is a week, okay? Some kids went home and some stayed back at college. But while these students stayed back at college, we as black folks love to have fun. We gonna barbecue. We gonna say who got the meat, who got the grill, who got the music. Let's do this, okay? And basically, that is how it started. Um, and I am so very happy that that is how this documentary started out, telling exactly how Freaknik started. Now, you might want to know, well, where did the name Freaknik come from? Because we all know, oh, Mr. Hunt, you know, all them words, all them derogatory words came later in the game. But I'll get down to that later as I progress with this timeline of telling you the truth about Freaknik. And I'm so happy I watched that documentary. I can't say it enough. These college students that were so-called left behind, if you will, decided that they would just go to the park and plan an event and just tell, a group of people, college students, that they were going to have a barbecue, a little gathering at the park for spring break. But we know, and they knew, they weren't going to call it a picnic. Why not? Oh my gosh, Freaknik is deeper than what you even thought. Why wouldn't they call it a picnic? Anybody? Children in the back? No, no answers, huh? Because during slavery and shoot, even Jim Crow era, well, wouldn't they lynch people of my persuasion, my color, my nation? They would have picnics. And, sometimes they would just be so bored, they would be like, pick a nigga. Yeah, pick a nigga to hang. And we gonna hang this nigga. And after we hang him, we gonna roast him. And we gonna eat him. Yeah. Oh, I know. The history of America is harsh. We gonna eat them, and we gonna fight over certain parts of the bodies as trophies. So picnic is pick a nigga, and this is what we gonna do, and we gonna have a grand old time at this picnic. So at these historical colleges, these students knew what picnic stood for. So instead of saying picnic, well, we gonna name it Freaknik. And see, Freaknik also had a different meaning to it because that Freaknik came from songs in the 70s. hmm Um, and I would play the music because I like to educate also, but I can't because I'll keep getting copyright strikes. um, but let me see if I can let me see if I can pull up the audio so maybe you can hear it because I don't want you just to take my word for it. Um, let me see. Let's play the audio. Maybe I won't get a strike with the audio, but just so you can hear for yourself the intro of how Freaknik became Freaknik. And then we're going to talk about the degradation, okay, of Freaknik and how it had to go and why it had to go. So as this pulls up, um, I hope this is informative uh, to you as well and to my brothers because a lot of damage has been done by people who have had an agenda. Okay? So, let me see. Let me pull this up.
When something organic and just real and for the people, it's damn near the world was more like pure.
The world was more pure. Not saying it was
something organic
totally
and just real and for the people, it's damn near immortal.
Oh, hold on. We don't want no music. As the intro comes on, let me turn it down because I don't want a copyright again. So, let the intro come through. There's a lot of music, so I don't know how much I'll be able to play. Let me see if I can get to them talking about Freaknik. How it actually began. Because children coming up, they hear Freaknik, and then if they listen to some of these people with podcasts, they're gonna be misled, misinformed, because they didn't live that life.
So it didn't start with the music industry. Atlanta has been the shit for black people. It was the shit when Little Richard played here. It was the shit when James Brown played here. It was the shit when Muhammad Ali fought here. But what really makes it the shit is every generation has a Freaknik moment where they come just to have some fun and they fuck around and find freedom. Welcome to Atlanta. Remix, it had to go down. I got something else to tell you about the new moment.
Let me turn that down. They got to throw in the songs that relate to the time of the era. Right? Now, this is not me glamorizing these people and their songs. This is what happened. This is history. Okay?
When you came to Atlanta, it made you feel like I could be an entrepreneur, I could do anything. Because look, I see people who look like me. So people started looking at that like, yo, this is where I want to move.
This is Rashida talking.
Growing up in the West, it was like our own little Wakanda. All of my friends' parents were successful, and you didn't have that in a lot of other metropolitan areas, like this real influx of middle class America.
When you look through the ranks of leadership in the city, there was a long-standing agreement that black people would have political power in Atlanta and white people had economic power, and we would meet in the city, do business, and typically retreated to segregated neighborhoods. And so that was an understanding that allowed the city to flourish in an uninterrupted way for decades.
Atlanta, let me say something real quick.
Possibility, cultural possibility.
Black folks, let me say this one more time. Black people put Atlanta on the map. Oh, yeah. Black folks, Israel, like always. But they put Atlanta on the map before even the Olympics was assigned, or they won the vote of the Olympics to come to Atlanta. Black folks had already put Atlanta on the map. How? The Freaknik. Let's get it.
Economic possibility, and educational possibility. There is a history in this country of the establishment not wanting black people to have access to education. And so we had to build our own.
Now, I'm sorry. I hate to stop and go. But if you know the true history about historical black colleges such as Spelman, all of those were founded by Edomites, because it's an agenda also. But that's another story for another day. But all black historical colleges were founded by Edomites. Okay, but let's keep going. All this music, God.
Into it is that it has multiple historically black colleges. So you have the young people who are coming to college and saying, well, hey, I like Atlanta, I'm staying. And you begin to see this kind of influx of people.
Yeah, I don't know. This probably won't stay up, y'all. I'll probably have to cut this one up and chop it up too.
The HBCU all around the country was a vibrant site of black life and black culture for over a century.
The draw for going to HBCU and coming to Atlanta specifically was the AUC. Spelman, Morehouse, Morris Brown, Clark Atlanta. It's literally like walking inside of the classroom and your cousins and your sisters and your brothers are there and you're just looking right back at yourself. I remember saying, this is like a utopia here in the AU Center, because you see black people in positions of power and prominence all the time. It was nothing to have Angela Davis visit the campus or to have Jesse Jackson, because that was just the environment we were in.
The Atlanta University Center is the reason Atlanta became the Black Mecca.
You just will not find that experience anywhere else. As a Black woman, it was really the only time that I was part of the majority. And everything's just for us and about us.
And the people
Hi, everybody from Daytona Beach in Florida, where right now it is spring.
Hold on for a minute. The people that you're listening to in the beginning are the founders of the Freaknik. And like I explained to you, the name Freaknik, and I'm what I want you to do is hear it out of their mouths. The name Freaknik had nothing to do with what it turned out to be. They were trying to take away picnic because they knew the history of picnic. And if you knew the history of picnic as a Black melanated person and you're throwing an event, you would probably try to figure out a different name for your event as well. But let's keep the party going.
Break time, and it is a mecca for the college-age crowd. How many? Well,
it was a group of Washington, D.C. students attending college here who kicked off what was then a very different kind of event, attended by not thousands or even hundreds, but 50 young people. Sharon Toomer showed me the group
50.
that started what the city now calls Black College Spring Break.
Turn the music down.
Probably 40 years since graduation. It's been too long. Except it was hair has turned blue.
We were just bringing a little piece of chocolate city to our
That's exact. That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it, Tom.
Right.
But the thing is that the way we started it is not how it ended.
Right.
And that's our thing. People don't know that. I think when people hear the word Freaknik, they think of the 90s.
Right.
But people did not know about the 80s. They didn't know how we started it.
They don't know where the name came from.
We had no money. We were getting support from left and right. We made it happen. And I'm telling you, we had no inclination to the depth of a legacy we were creating.
Flashback to 1983. Oh shoot, I was in middle school.
Just about every state had a club. That was the opportunity to develop your first camaraderie. The state clubs, I think today it would be what social media is. The state clubs is what drew people closer together.
There was a Michigan club. We had a California club. There was a tri-state club. Philly club, I guess, was for Pennsylvania. But of all of the state clubs, all the state organizations, I'd say that the DC Metro Club, we were the ones that had the reputation. We were the ones that threw the best parties. We wanted to provide events that would help to support our students around things like the school breaks, where we could party and just celebrate being together.
It came time for our spring break activity. Some people were going home, some people were going someplace else, but a lot of us were staying in Atlanta for spring break. We're only talking about like a week time. Many people couldn't afford to go home. I was one of them. So we decided, well, hey, we're all here. We need to get together. We need to do something.
We said, let's plan a picnic. We're going to have a picnic during spring break. I said, we need to have some kind of a theme for the year so we can plan all of our events around a theme. And I remember Tony said to me something to the effect that we should bring back the freak.
Here we go. Here we go. Put your listening there. Hold on. Put your listening ears on. Here's where the word freak comes from for Freaknik. Let's go.
Into the name of the event when we promoted it.
In 1978,
Let's freak.
Chic, they did
Let's
the song
freak.
Chic the
Freak out.
Of course,
Y'all
the
know
song
nothing
goes,
about that.
freak
And then there's a dance that accompanies it.
People think that the freak is freaky, but when we were doing the freak, it wasn't scandalous, but it was fun.
Okay.
We just
So I wanted you guys to hear the beginning of this. It was 50 people out of a college club who started the Freaknik, and the name came from a song. Let's freak out. Let's freak the chic. Okay? And the degradation that comes along down the line. Okay? I know. It hurt. Ooh, wee. I know it might piss some folks off because how this was promoted. How this was promoted. Oh, what your mama did. And I'm not here to bash men or any of that. I'm here to stop this cycle because um, it's the bashing of the women and what your mama did and how this was promoted. And I don't know if it was promoted the way it was because it could have been, um, if I look at it, ingenious because you would have so many men who are hurt and mad go and look at this documentary of the Freaknik and think, oh yeah, now we get to see, yeah, let's see if we can see so and so mama, your grandmama was at the Freaknik cutting the food. And it didn't start that way. Ingenious on one hand, yes, I would have to say. But these people, these college students who came up with the idea of community, camaraderie, um, and it's just something to do for a week while they had a spring break session. Came up with the name, and I don't think I let you hear it. Let me see if they finish out the part where they didn't want to pick picnic either because of its history. Hold on.
deciding the date for the spring picnic. Now we've got to come up with a name and something that's going to fit in with our theme.
And so our classmate said, let's call it Freaknik. Merging of picnic, which we shouldn't be using anymore now that we know we're educated on what picnic meant, and freak. I thought it was really clever. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, we just come up with stuff on the fly.
There you go. On the fly.
And
that's how Freaknik got its name. Out of fun, not from wanting to be picnic because we knew the history of picnic, and from a song, Freak Out. Let's freak this sheep. A 70s song. Now, I'm not here to say Freaknik didn't get wild and crazy. Women went down there, men went down there, and in the beginning it was fun and it grew rapidos. Rapidos. It grew very fast, okay? Um, and mind you, it grew so fast. This was a time before cell phone, social media. This was word of mouth, okay? And the Freaknik put Atlanta on the map. It put Atlanta on the map so smooth that even the artists, up and coming artists, would go to Freaknik to, put out their music and things of that nature. And I just hope that it draws in more people to watch this documentary on Hulu about Freaknik, because what I seen um, is a parallel of today's It's just a parallel of a cycle of degradation. Because it started out fun. Yes, it got a little wild. Yes, they were wearing the Daisy Dukes and kind of scantily clad and but it was even then they weren't being fondled. They might have been dancing in the streets, just out there having fun. But as it got more and more notoriety and stars studded, and more concerts, Biggie Smalls, and all these people started to appear, down at Freaknik, and so that even drew more and more people down, and it boosted the economy, to say the least. There was no problem at all. That black dollar is something powerful. That black dollar is something powerful. We could just get the mindset to wrangle in the black dollar and really build communities, we would be a force to be reckoned with. But that black dollar boosted the economy of Atlanta, Georgia. And so the Freaknik went on for a couple of years, but the degradation started to emerge. And I say that there's a correlation from the 90s Freaknik to today's era that I am seeing with degradation. And like I said, this is not to bash men, but I want you, if you have the opportunity, to go and watch this documentary on Hulu about the Freaknik. Because I see that men, and I've heard men say, oh, the women of the 90s, they look so much more pure. They didn't have the false eyelashes, and they didn't do this, but they had different things that I'm sure the men of the 90s didn't like. Some men, right? Like the long, long fingernails, all the gold necklaces and chains and gold teeth and big updo hair. That's the same equivalent to the eyelashes and, the makeup and your era, the millennials. And so as this positive event start to progress and more people got wind of this event and started to bombard the city, which boosted the economy of Atlanta, and it became basically the new chocolate city because Chi-Town was the first chocolate city, but Atlanta became the place where you wanted to move to. Um, there became almost a competition because Atlanta got selected to host the Olympics. And see, well, when now you have Edom having to show off, the streets must be cleaned up, um, and by then the degradation had started to occur, where instead of dancing in the streets, laughing and barbecuing and having a good time. Yes, they wore their short shorts, and goodness, twerking was back then. If you think twerking was new, no sir, no sirree, no ma'am. But instead of all the fun partying and all of that, um, the groping, the pooling um, started to occur. The degradation of women started to occur. And it's almost like now the degradation of women has started to occur, has been occurring for a while. And it's not only on any platforms that you see, but it's leaking out into real life society. So when the Olympics was announced that it would be taking place in Atlanta, Georgia, and then people started to want the Freaknik out of Atlanta, they started blocking off the highways, making it hard to get downtown access and making the atmosphere more and more intense, where rapes started to occur. And I just want you to think for a minute, because I don't want you to think or take my words as me male bashing. But normally, 99.9% of the time, when rape occurs, it's done by the male of our species. Okay? And so this started to occur, and by Atlanta being nominated for the Olympics, well, it was no problem for the police to try to route the, the visitors for spring break just down the highway for miles and miles, for frustration to build, and for the expectation that people thought they were going to come to see the old Freaknik of past days. They didn't wind up seeing that. They wind up seeing or sitting on highways for hours at a time. And so, what I'm going to do is try to fast forward this to the end of this documentary, to the degradation, and why there is no longer a Freaknik. So let me see if I got it to far enough down. Hold on. Get past these commercials. And why I feel that there is almost like a parallel to this Freaknik documentary, that I see that the degradation and the violence towards women um, is seeping off of these internet streets onto mainstream streets, and it's going to be an explosion. But it's us harming us. When it started off as something fun, some of these platforms and just social media started off as a fun way to interact with people miles and miles away, right? That's the same in my mind as I watched this documentary, as people miles and miles away started to come to this one city to have fun. And it turned into something else, a beast of its former glory. And I pray that we as people, we wake up to see what is going on. It might be the cycle we must take, but it's just a parallel that I see with the Freaknik, um, and how it started. And I want you to look at this in a broader way. I don't want you to nitpick on, well, there's scantily clad women dressed and there's scantily clad men and this. Look at the broader picture and look at what's going on in society today as far as the nation of Israel located in the Americas, what's happening. And there is such a parallel that I see that it's kind of scary.
Recognize it as, and what we all recognize it as, because we live this shit. From year in to year out, and cars and the party and all that. That's how it should be.
If you're an experienced Freaknik, you don't know how to treat Freaknik.
Right.
You can't just buy the name.
You can own T-shirts that say Freaknik. Freaknik on them, but you can't own like the essence of Freaknik. You know what I'm saying? That's just how I feel.
When I say free, you say Nick. Free, When I say free,
I went too far.
People are trying to bring Freaknik back.
Okay. I'm going to start with this woman where they started to assault women.
So I sucker punch him, and we start tussling in the car because I didn't want him to drive off with me in the car, leaving my roommate. And so we're fighting. The crowd is starting to come from both sides of the street. So someone opens up my car door and starts to pull me out, and they drag me on the ground and just start ripping at my clothing. Just start ripping. And I would say there were probably 10 active guys, almost like kind of like taking turns. The only thing that saved me from getting raped was a man yelled out police. And then the crowd kind of just scatters. When it doesn't scatter, it kind of loosens up, if you will. When I got up, both breasts were out of the shirt. The shirt was ripped. Only the elastic was holding my skirt together. My hair was all over the place, as you can imagine. I was cut and bruised and the whole nine. I'm like, what the hell just happened? And I'm scared and, all these emotions on top of anger and frustration, because where are the people that are supposed to protect and serve?
Police say they may be able to control the traffic, but they cannot always control the crowd. So they're warning women to have fun, but be careful.
So there was nothing that the Atlanta Police Department did to follow up. I never got an apology. Not that I was expecting one, but nothing happened. It kind of like the mayor and the police chief, I feel like they were enablers in a sense. They were protecting one group of people, but exposing another group of people to the possibility of something like this happen.
Atlanta, Georgia, Freaknik, 50,000 attendees, 481 arrests, 4 for rape, 6 for fondling. The majority of the major problems caused by non-college students.
It could be anybody, you know what I'm saying? You're at the wrong place at the wrong time, anything can happen to you, you know?
You can have fun, but it's also dangerous.
Guys were reaching inside the girls' sunroof top, grabbing on their breasts, or if the girls was walking down the street, they were going up under their dress and everything, and I felt like the women were being violated.
Well, police say there is no excuse and no provocation for rape. Sexuality has become an almost sideshow on the streets.
There is a narrative in this country that black men are sexually violent, sexual predators, sexually irresponsible. And it's important that we don't reinforce that idea by suggesting that Freaknik was just filled with these crazy, violent black male sexual predators. There was a lot of harassment. There was a lot of unwanted touching. And there was, in some cases, rape. But most people who attended Freaknik did not participate in any kind of sexual misconduct. That's important.
So after the attack, again, I was just in this weird mental state, kind of blah, but then angry, and I was afraid of crowds, and I was specifically and unfortunately afraid of black crowds, because I unfortunately were attacked by my brothers. Like, for the life of me, I couldn't get it. I'm like, certainly, clearly you have a mom, clearly you got a grandmama, sister, auntie, somewhere along those lines, you have females in your life, and what if it was them?
I did hear about that unfortunate situation with that young lady. Several of my friends felt disrespected from some of the guys, like just unwanted advances and them being rude. And so that's why, again, it got to a point where we didn't really want to hang out during Freaknik because it became something different.
Freaknik changed, and folks weren't handling it in the way that it had been handled before.
It got to the point where Freaknik wasn't fun, not just the traffic. The energy started feeling a lot more predatory.
If you have to say protect Black women in the 2020s, then imagine what you had to say in the 1990s. It just hurt me. And I came from Spelman, where our total fabric DNA is about uplifting the greatness of women.
So when you hear Black men say, oh, it's the 90s, some of them don't know what the heck they're talking about. And some of them are younger and did not live through that time nor that era. And Freaknik started off as something positive. The name wasn't even associated with being freaky. And if you don't know the history, you will assume the history. And the degradation that slowly took hold of a people is what I see taking hold of the same people in this era. From social media leaking on to mainstream society in the real world off of these apps, they are getting negative information, false information, information that they do not take time or choose not to look up any information of their own, but are fed information and log off and take that information with them into the real world of society and now are harming their very own. The degradation from fun to degradation, from fun of the Freaknik, the history, the 50 people who started a simple cookout barbecue, to an economic boom for a city. Degradation from platforms, from the internet being a new, exciting adventure, to slowly becoming degradation in the same manner of its own people and being used not only for women to be degraded, but for Black men to be degraded by going out and taking in and growing and watering these seeds that are planted in the mind, see, in the minds of men who now have false information. Degradation of women, well, you are now seeing women, just like this woman who spoke out. She could not understand how her own Black brothers were attacking her, ripping and pulling her clothes off. And she was in a car. And she wasn't even going to Freaknik. Go and watch the full documentary. This is the same thing that is happening now, my people, my peeps. But our brothers cannot see it because they're being pumped lies about their own women and fed these lies only to spout them off on platforms that was fun, interesting, a new horizon. but it's become a platform of degradation of their own society. I want just to stop in real quick tonight to tell you that I have to say, at first I didn't want to watch the documentary because of how it was promoted. I don't know if they intentionally promoted it the way that they did by saying, "Oh, we caught your mama was at Freaknik," to get the opposite response for people to run to the documentary. Because once you watch this documentary, you're going to see something totally different than what you actually expected it to be. I'm out, and much, much love.